Welcome in to a special NBA Finals edition of the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, having spent time with the Bucks, Suns, and Knicks. And I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. And we're also joined by 2-time Emmy Award winner Michael Worldby Freer, who is a senior writer at StatFactor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. Wednesday night, the Boston Celtics took a commanding 3-0 series lead with their 106-99 victory on the road in Dallas against the Mavs. But before we break Game 3 down, just a quick reminder, BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use our promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. And fellas, I thought we'd start at the very top of this one here tonight. At the beginning of Game 3, during the pregame, when we were awaiting the status of Kristaps Porzingis, he was, of course, a game-time decision in this one, but became a late scratch prior to the start of Game 3 in Dallas. So, Bruce, I'm going to start with you as our Celtics fan here. Were you surprised that KP didn't give it a go tonight?
No, I was not surprised. I would have been surprised had the series been 1-1 going into Game 3 and he didn't play. But with a 2-0 lead, I was not surprised at all, because you could have lost this game if you were Boston and hopefully brought him back for Game 4. But now I don't think we'll be seeing him in Game 4.
No, I don't think we will either, especially with the commanding lead there. Worldby, what were your thoughts on KP's late scratch? Were you surprised to see that?
Well, you heard the news on Tuesday night late that he was questionable with a rare leg injury, as it was described. So it immediately got your attention. I'm with Bruce. There's absolutely no reason to risk putting him out there given his injury history. This is a team built not just for this season. You don't want to give up on this season, obviously, but this is a team that you're looking down the road. This is a long-term thing, and you got to be careful with somebody like Porzingis and his injury history. Up to nothing, looking like clearly the better team in this series. You're not going to take a chance if it's not necessary.
Yeah, I wasn't that surprised as well, just given the circumstances in the series with the 2-0 lead. What I was surprised at, Bruce, and probably the only time we're going to mention him on this show here tonight, is we did get a rare Xavier Tillman sighting, and it was a quality one. He ended up playing 11 minutes in Game 3, which is kind of significant. So it was good to see him out there for most of those minutes coming in the first half there. But Luka was also a game-time decision, but zero surprise with him playing in this one for the opposite reason, right? Given the series and situation back at home, this was a must-win for Dallas in Game 3. But out of the gates, Bruce, we'll get right to the first quarter here. The Mavericks came out hot. What was your initial reaction those first couple of minutes seeing Dallas's response back at home?
I had said during our previous show that Kyrie Irving had to bust out of the gate if Dallas was going to have a chance to win. I said he would need to have 10 points in the first quarter, Well, he came close. He had 9 points in the first quarter. Luka had 13, so they had 22 of Dallas's 31. And that was kind of the theme for the whole game. I mean, they were just so top-heavy with those two guys. There was no real balance to what they were doing, and that eventually was their undoing and has been their undoing for the entire series.
And we'll be being a non-biased fan for this one, just wanting to see a good NBA Finals. Did you hold out hope that the Mavericks, after watching that first quarter, could make this a series and win this one, just for how the early stages of this game went?
Yeah, the one thing that was concerning about Dallas was their offense. They hadn't really played well offensively in this series. They are point per possession in the first 2 games. That's not going to get it done against a team like Boston, which I've mentioned before, the most efficient offense in the history of the league this season. So your offense has to step up, and it did. It's not good to have it at just two guys and everybody else as a rule. But when you're Dallas, and you have two of the best in the league in Kyrie and Luka, and they're both going well as they were in the first quarter. That signs were good for them to. Defensively, they weren't getting it done necessarily, but offensively, 31 points in a quarter is what you would want out of a team down 0-2 playing your first home game.
And we've mentioned the fact that, of course, Kyrie Irving had a nice offensive game. On the flip side of that, Bruce, we got an aggressive game from Jayson Tatum. What did you think of his play? He 31 points, put up 26 shots, including half of those shots coming behind the line. Were you surprised to see him get a little bit more involved in this one?
Not really surprised, but kind of expected it, because I think a lot of people were saying, Jayson Tatum hasn't had that game yet. And with Porzingis not available, I think it wasn't totally unexpected that he would try to be a bit more aggressive. I thought, look, he shot 11 out of 26, which is not a great percentage, although it's better than he has been shooting. But he kind of loosened them up a little bit, Dallas's defense, by hitting some threes in the first half. And he had 20 points at halftime, and he ended up the game with 31. So I thought that, he got them kind of going. And then in the second half, his partner did most of the damage, and I know we're going to get to that shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. Jaylen Brown will definitely be discussed in this one. Will be any takeaways from Jayson Tatum's game here tonight?
Well, I mentioned in our previous episode that if he wants to be considered in that top 5 category, which is where he's always been on the cusp of, if you got to have a better game than what we've seen shooting wise, and his shooting early on was solid. It was aggressive, and their Celtics offense in general, you saw for the most part until we got to the fourth quarter there. You saw them about as good as they've been all series.
And looking at the shooting here, of course, it was pretty even there with Boston shooting 46% from the field while Dallas shot 44%. The one thing that really kind of stood out to me is the three-pointers. And I'll turn it back to you on this one. Boston goes 7 of 46 from the three-point line, 46 attempts from behind the line.
17 of 46.
Okay, my bad. I don't even know what I said there. I kind of got caught up in the moment there, Bruce. Thanks for the correction there. And as for Dallas, they went 9 of 25. So, I mean, they shot an additional 21 threes in this one. I mean, can Dallas win a game where Boston's able to even attempt 21 more threes than them?
They can. It's just they have to shoot it better because Boston, this is their thing. I've mentioned it over and over throughout the season. No team, 47% of their field goal attempts during the regular season for Boston came from three-point range. Easily the highest in the league, highest percentage in the league. Dallas was actually number 2. And this year, what made them so great is they shot the ball really well from three-point range, meaning they were number 1 in the percentage of scoring their points that came from three-point range. Well, that's what we saw tonight. This is their thing. That they've been this way for years, even before Joe Mazzulla got there. But they've taken it to another level. And when you're hitting the way they're hitting, 37% isn't an outstanding percentage necessarily, because if you look at Dallas, 36%. So in percentage, it's about even. But when you get outscored by 24 points from three-point range, it's hard to keep up. And that's all Dallas, all Boston has to do is be an average team shooting the ball, and they're tough to beat. This was slightly above average. Not spectacular, but slightly above average. And that was really a difference maker in the game.
Boston had 82 field goal attempts in the game, 46 of them from 3. So that's 56% of their field goal attempts were from three-point range. World Beast said their season average was like 47. So they even, increased it by a lot. I mean, 56%. And their two-point shooting was good too. There were 21 of 36 on twos. So, they were just better. I mean, look, They had more weapons. It's just, it's probably, I'm not going to say it's going to be a sweep, but, Dallas just, they tried. I mean, I respect the fact that Jason Kidd threw Tim Hardaway out there to try and give him a chance to shoot some threes. He didn't hit a single one.
Yeah, even down the stretch there when James Capers let that foul go on Derek White and gave him a free look there, and that was a clink as well. But one last thing on the volume of threes from Boston here tonight, Bruce. Curious whether or not you think that was a result of KP not being available and kind of going a little smaller. Do you think there was any correlation there, or not at all? Just that was the game plan, to be a little bit more aggressive from the outside.
I would say it probably had an effect, even though KP shoots a fairly high number of threes himself. But, they also like to get him the ball in the paint, let him go to the post. But yeah, I suppose that was a factor, Ross.
All right. And then kind of looking at the free throw numbers in this game, quite rare here. Boston shot almost 93% from the line, going 13 of 14. Only had 3 guys get to the line, and that was Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jayson Tatum. And Jaylen Brown was the only unfortunate one to miss one, going 4 of 5. Were you surprised to just see the overall free throw numbers, given the fact that Luka Doncic fouled out of this game late, Bruce?
Well, Boston doesn't normally shoot a high number of free throws because they take so many threes, right?
Yeah.
So, when you're a 3-point shooting team, you don't really get to the line a lot. Their percentage, I mean, it's been pretty good in this series. I mean, I don't have the box scores from the previous games right in front of me, but I mean, they were 19 of 20 in one of the other games. I forget what they were, in the third game. So, I mean, look, in football, they say the key to winning is, run the ball and play defense. A lot of times in the NBA, it's play defense and make your free throws.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, World B, we look at the defensive numbers here. And being that Boston shot so many threes, Boston ended up having 6 blocks in this game. And Dallas only had 1. I mean, as far as the defense is concerned, anything stand out on that end of the floor for Dallas that caught your attention here tonight?
Well, the block shots for Boston is not unusual. You have Derek White, who's one of the best in the league at blocking shots at his position, and he had a couple tonight. He had a big one in the fourth quarter. From Dallas's perspective, the way their offense operates right now, the lack of ball movement out of them is really this series is really atrocious. Let's just call it what it is. We talked about that after the first 2 games. They only average about, I think I said 210 passes a game compared to, say, Boston, which gets like 270 a game. That's a big difference in ball movement, and tonight, it's just an assist without getting the numbers on passes or whatever. The assist, Dallas had 15 assists on 38 field goals, while Boston had 26 on 38 field goals. You can see the difference right there. When you don't move the ball and you're as good a defensive team as Boston is, it's a lot easier to guard that way. You don't have to. You can play man up. You don't have to double team. You can switch easily when you don't have as much ball movement going on and you set a screen. So Dallas's offense, well, Boston's a great defense, obviously. Dallas's offense makes it even easier for Boston to play defense, in my opinion.
But the 2 guys that, Kyrie and Luka had 55 of their 86 shots. So again, as I alluded to at the very beginning, they're so unbalanced. It just ties exactly into what World B just said. It makes it easier to guard the team when you know that 3 of the guys on the floor at any given moment may not even touch the ball on multiple consecutive possessions.
Now, it's also hard when nobody else on this team for Dallas is stepping up and scoring. P.J. Washington got some points during that run in the fourth quarter when they really needed it. But where was he for the first 3 quarters? He was really non-existent, and they need a third. I agree with Bruce that when you only have 2 guys, you're basically offensively playing 2 against 5. Totally true. But those are the only 2 I want the ball in their hands at this point if I'm Dallas, because they're the only ones that can put it in the basket.
Yeah, and speaking of that 2-headed monster in Dallas, Bruce, we had talked before we went live here on tonight's show, and the fact that Luka obviously slowed down there in the second half. Yeah, he ran into some foul trouble, ultimately fouled out. But how much do you think just the wear and tear of the playoffs and regular season is starting to catch up to him.
Well, I mean, look, all season long, and I've said this so many times that I'm tired of hearing myself say it, Boston's perimeter defense is like putting the other team's guards through the meat grinder. They just play physical. They move their feet. They're relentless. There are no like gimme possessions when you're playing against, when you're Kyrie and Luka. Everything is contested. I said prior to this series, even though I said Boston would win, I said those guys are going to get their numbers, but they're going to have to work like hell to do it. And I think Kyrie looked fresh as a daisy tonight for about 3.5 quarters, but Luka did not. I mean, he gutted it out, and he's a gritty guy. I've gained tons of respect for him in watching how he's gone about his business. But, I mean, this has been pretty much an impossible assignment, even for a future Hall of Famer like him.
No question. And as we got to that third quarter, the Celtics caught their fire to start the second half, really kind of gained some momentum there and looked like they were going to pull away with this one on the road in game 3. But then late down the stretch there, Dallas, as they have done the last couple of games in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game, really stepped up that team defense. And so, Bruce, I'm curious here. Were you ever nervous in the fourth as Dallas went on their 22-2 run?
Yes, of course I was nervous in the fourth. They had all the momentum. They're playing in front of their home crowd. They had these two guys that were going off. I didn't really feel comfortable until Luka fouled out. I mean, because I just felt like, because I've seen Boston do this before. I mean, I said after game 2, well, they've learned their lesson. They're not going to take their foot off the gas, in game 3. Well, they did take their foot off the gas. They went like 6 minutes in the fourth quarter without getting any points. And during that run in particular, and they were taking terrible shots, contested threes, just sloppy passing, just, turn the ball over. So, yes, I was nervous.
All right. And World B wanted to get your take on that. The offensive call on P.J. Washington in the backcourt when he was going to go set the screen that Kyrie didn't even use, but Drew Holiday was pressuring Kyrie full court there, and they called the turnover there on Dallas. Were you surprised they made that call, given the fact Kyrie didn't even take the screen, or do you think that was the correct call?
I thought it was the correct call, but if they had let it go, I would have because it immediately sets up a 5-on-4 when Drew gets knocked down. That impacts. He didn't take the screen, that's true, but immediately that screen, and I thought PJ kind of put a little more oomph on it. And I've talked to you guys before about this, how players, the screen gets used more than anything else at any time we've seen in this game. And players just can't set screens and hold them. It drives me up a wall as a fan to see, just hold your position. Don't move. And he moved, and he delivered an extra oomph to Drew Holiday, who went down. But you have to call it because it immediately sets up a 5-on-4 otherwise. And now it's a foul that's creating an advantage for Dallas. That was a big play, obviously, but Boston has, I mentioned this during the regular season, Boston, in terms of pace, possessions per 48 minutes, Boston was the worst. They were the number 1 team in pace in the first quarter during the regular season. They were last in the fourth quarter because, and one of the reasons, there are a lot of reasons for it. They're up so big, they just, run out the clock. But you could see it in this game, a perfect example. The ball movement was gone. It was 1 or 2 passes, hold it, worry about the clock. And when you have as good, as many good shooters as Boston has, it's somewhat understandable. You let these guys take their shots. But as Bruce mentioned, you don't move the ball, the shots all of a sudden become contested. Now you get Dallas on a run. Now the energy's up. The crowd's getting them built. Now I contest it even more. Now I'm jumping a little bit more to block your shot. I'm grabbing every rebound. They didn't have that many offensive boards Boston did in the fourth quarter. So that's or in the game, actually, for that matter. So that sets up for Dallas offensively. So it's not going to cost them, obviously. Boston, barring something major unforeseen, is, we're going to wrap this series up at some point. But there was a problem this year for the Celtics is their play in the fourth quarter, allowing teams get in it. They did blow a 31-point lead, as Bruce knows, to Atlanta towards the end of the season with a full roster, maybe minus KP, but with the other four in the lineup. So it was a problem or a source of concern. It will ultimately not cost them. Boston fans are happy about that, but it was a problem, and you saw it tonight.
Sure, yeah. And as for me, those are the thoughts I had for Game 3. Do you care if we turn our attention to Game 4 predictions, Bruce?
No, I'm fine with it. I wanted to talk a little bit though about how, with the Tatum Brown dynamic in Game 3, because in the first half it was all Jayson Tatum, in the second half it was all Jaylen Brown. I mean, Jaylen Brown had 24 points in the second half. He came sort of close to a triple-double, 30 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Those 8 assists were huge. I mean, because really in the first half, I think he had 5 of them. So, and that's a lot of assists in the first half for him because he only had 6 points at halftime. But then he absolutely blew their doors off in the third quarter. I mean, he had 15 points in the third quarter. He had the assists. He had rebounds. He might have pushed himself slightly ahead of Jrue Holiday in the MVP of the finals race at this point, because tonight he was the man.
He had some really timely buckets. First off, that dunk down the middle of the lane was straight up nasty in traffic. And then late down the stretch there, he had a pivotal offensive putback to get 2 points there. That was a big bucket for Boston when they needed it most. So certainly agree there. Will be, as far as Finals MVP is concerned, do you think Jaylen Brown elevated himself above Jrue Holiday here tonight?
I think his performance tonight, right now, he is the story. He's been the best player in this series, in my opinion. 16 points. They only had 36 points in the paint Boston had tonight. Their second fewest in a playoff game this postseason. And Jaylen Brown had 16 of them. Jayson Tatum had 14. So they had 30 of the 36 points in the paint. So they dominate. We talk about the three-point shooting, which obviously we should. But 16 of his 30 for Jaylen Brown came in the paint. So there were big shots in there. And he looked like the best player on the court tonight for me, at least from a Celtics standpoint. And another really good game out of him. I would think he'd be the MVP.
And Bruce, if you got to vote, who would it go to right now?
Based on a lot of things. I mean, I was all about Jrue Holiday after Game 2, and Jrue ended up actually having a very solid second half tonight. But it's Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, well, I hope everyone listened to my best bets, because before the series started, I said take Jaylen Brown plus 600 to win Finals MVP. So for those of you that did so, fingers crossed, we are well on our way. We are pacing to possibly hitting that nice bet. So as far as Game 4 is concerned, Bruce, I mean, I'll start with you on this one, being our Celtic fan. Do you hope they just close it out, or is there a little bit of you that hopes that this goes 5 and you can win it in Boston?
No, I want to see him close it out. I mean, look, someone could get hurt. Someone could get hurt. And look, it would be a really nice final record for them if they were to sweep the series. Their combined regular season and playoff record would be 80-20. That sounds better than 80-21 to me. So that would, and I think that would put this year's Celtics team as probably one of the 5 best Celtics season performance as a team, possibly ever. I mean, look, you almost put the Bill Russell dynasty as kind of like one great team because it was him. But then, then you had the Havlicek Cowens, you had the Bird, McHale, you had the big 3 in 08, and then you have this team. And I think this team is in the top 5. If, look, even if they don't sweep, but if they go 80-20, I mean, that might be the second best overall record regular season and playoffs combined of all of the Celtics championship teams, trailing only the 85-86 team.
Yeah, it'd be hard to argue against that for sure. World B, as for Game 4, do you see this being a straight-up sweep or a gentleman's sweep for Boston?
It's hard for me to see Dallas coming up and pulling out a game. I would like to see it continue. I'd like to stretch this out as far as at least make Boston a little nervous, take a game or two or whatever. But this was a big one tonight. They had everything going for them at the half. Everything was looking great. Third quarter was a miserable one for them, and it ultimately proved their demise. Boston, Bruce knows, 17 NBA titles in their franchise history. And as far as I could tell, only once have they swept the finals, and that was 1959. Wow. They beat the Lakers back when the Lakers were in Minneapolis. That was before Jerry West and Elgin Baylor and those guys came along. So this is, to Bruce's point, they're coming with the most dominating season, one of the most dominating seasons they've had in the regular season for Boston, to finish it off with a sweep and lose, twice in the entire postseason. You'd have to really look at this Celtics team as one of the all-time great Celtics teams. Absolutely. I don't foresee it going back to Boston. I would like to. I don't see it happening.
I think we're going to need to see a fluke game from one of the wings on Dallas, and we can call it the Josh Green game or the Derek Jones Jr. game. And, they're going to have some.
It won't be the Tim Hardaway Jr. game, I'll tell you that much. He had his shot.
Yeah.
It sure as hell isn't going to be the Maxi Kleber game.
No.
By the way, this means nothing to the grand scheme of things, but we talked about on our show earlier this week. Jaden Hardy, did he do something to Jason Kidd? Did he say something bad to him or whatever? Did he you can't get more than 4 minutes out of this kid in a game where you gave Tim Hardaway 20 minutes and he gave you zilch in the box score. Here's a kid that's been playing well in his limited time, and you can't get him even 4 minutes, a third of a quarter. It's unbelievable.
Xavier Tillman played 11. Case in point, you can't find Jaden Hardy 11 minutes. If Boston can find Tillman,
I guess not.
Yeah.
And Xavier Tillman, that 3-pointer that he hit out of the corner, talk about something you didn't even think he would shoot one, let alone make one.
Yeah.
And it was and another unsung hero for Boston tonight that we haven't said anything about, but in the first half he was huge, was Sam Hauser.
Yeah.
Sam Hauser went 3 for 3 on threes. He had 9 points at the half. He didn't do anything after halftime because the other guards took over. But when Holiday and White were struggling in the first half, Sam Hauser gave them a huge lift, and also too played much better defense than people generally think he's going to play. They look at him and they think, oh, this guy's going to be somebody that we can abuse on defense. And I've watched the guy play all season. He moves his feet. He doesn't commit stupid fouls. And, when he hits his first three, he's a real threat. So give Sam Hauser one flower, maybe not a bunch of them, but a flower for Sam Hauser tonight.
By the way, in the first 2 games of this finals, the highest net efficiency on court, off court belonged to Sam Hauser among Celtics, actually among everybody. The Celtics were 29 points per 100 possessions better with Hauser on the floor than when he was off the floor, which is really, in limited minutes, is making a major impact on a team. That's basically outscoring, your team outscores the other by almost 30 points when you're on the court. So that's pretty impressive out of him, to Bruce's point. In limited minutes, I think he only had about 44 minutes over the first 2 games of the series, something like maybe not even. But, his limited time, he's been an impact, and he was in Game 3 as well.
Yeah, I think the Dallas Mavericks would kill to have a guy like Sam Hauser on that team right about now. He would be great if they could have Sam Hauser in this series. We might be looking at a different 3-0. It could probably be 2-1 at this point, but Sam Hauser definitely could play a major factor in there. So definitely glad we gave him some shine here on the 48 Minutes podcast here tonight. But before we wind down tonight's show, we're going to take a quick break and come back with some major news in basketball here today with the passing of Jerry West. And we're back. And before we close out tonight's show, fellas, we definitely need to touch on the passing of NBA legend and the logo man himself, Jerry West. Obviously, you both have fond memories of him, but World B, I'll let you start things off with the news, your reaction to hearing that this morning and just what you'll remember most about Jerry West moving forward.
Well, it was a sad day for the NBA for basketball, really. It was certainly a sad day in West Virginia, the entire state, because he was the most well-known person in the state, let alone basketball player. So, it's a sad day in general. My memories of him are just excellent on the court as a player. He was probably one of the 10 best to ever play this game. He did everything you'd want to do out of a player, except he couldn't beat Bruce's Celtics, no matter how hard how much of an effort he gave. He won MVP of the finals one year in '69 on a team that lost to the Celtics. He was that good of a player. And his skills, his genius as a GM are legendary as well, not just with the Lakers. He built Showtime. He and Elgin Baylor made Laker basketball popular in LA when he moved there. It wasn't much of anything before those two came along. So it's been a sad day. I'll tell you a quick story. I was a freshman at West Virginia, and I worked in the sports information department while I was there. And one day I go in the office, and there are these old movie reels of Jerry West, of WVU basketball from 1959, and it was versus Kentucky. I asked if I could watch it, got a projector, went back into the office across the hall for the public relations office, put it up on the screen, and watched Jerry West and the Mountaineers play against Kentucky. And I was blown away at his talent level, which his skill level was not just better than anybody. It was like a generation ahead of everybody else as a player. He was that good of a player, and people of later generations know him as a GM genius. But he did it with the Lakers. He did it with the Warriors. He did it with the Grizzlies. Made them all winners.
Bruce? Well, I have so many thoughts about Jerry West. I'll try and keep this reasonable. But World B mentioned how he was named the most valuable player of the NBA Finals in 1969 when his team lost. 10 years earlier, he did the exact same thing in college. He was named most outstanding player of the NCAA tournament when West Virginia lost to Cal in 1959. So he did something twice that will probably never, ever be done again by anybody, because that just doesn't happen anymore, right? If it did, LeBron James would have won MVP of the finals one of the years that they lost to Golden State, but that's not how it works anymore. So there's that. One of his most famous shots was in the 1970 NBA Finals. He hit a half-court shot, tied the game. Had there been a three-point shot back then, LA might have won that series because they lost that game in overtime, and it was a 7-game series. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, but, that's a little-known thing. That was a famous shot. But my personal Jerry West story happened when I was 11 or 12 years old, growing up in my hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts. We had a shopping mall in Brockton, Westgate Mall, and there was a store in that mall called Bradley's, which was sort of like a mini version of like a Walmart. It was a department store. Walmart, I don't think was invented then. And one day, and my mother went shopping after school, and I would tag along. So when she'd be shopping, I'd say, I'll be in the sporting goods department at Bradley's, swinging bats, bouncing balls, whatever, while she shopped, right? I walk in there, and Jerry West is sitting there on one of those metal folding chairs like you have at the church bingo game, right, by the cash register at in the sporting goods department by himself. No representative from anybody with the store, whatever. Just Jerry West sitting there in a suit with a stack of photos, okay, And I'm going to lean off camera for a second. I want to grab something. All right, I'm back. This is the photo, all right? I asked him, I didn't even ask him because I couldn't even speak. I was like, oh my God, it's Jerry West. It's like the logo. And that pose in that picture is the logo pose. And you can see that's where he signed the picture for me right down there.
Yep.
That, as an 11 or a 12-year-old kid, to see Jerry West, and I like I said, I couldn't even speak. So I still have that picture more than 50 years later. It's one of my most prized possessions. I put a shot of it up on Twitter today because that was my little Jerry West story. His legacy as a player, as an executive, and just as one of the titans of the NBA, he occupies the most unique spot in the world of basketball. And any fan of any team has to respect the man for all that he did. And certainly the players that he crossed paths with appreciated him as well. Just a wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah, I didn't have the luxury, of course, to watch much of him, but I've seen the highlights. And what really spoke volumes more so to me today, and you alluded to it, Bruce, is just the outpour of posts and memories that current and former players and coaches all put out on social media today. And certainly took some time out of my day to read some of those. And it seems like he was a tremendous role model and leader for so many that have obviously impacted this game moving forward, even to today's game. So my thoughts and prayers go out to Jerry's family and the rest of the basketball world. Bruce?
One more quick plug. One of the friends of our show, our 48 Minutes show, is Dave Wohl, the former Clippers GM. He was a player and he was an assistant coach on the Showtime Lakers. Back in my previous company, Pure Hoops Media, Dave used to do a show called Dave's Front Office, and he did a 2-part podcast with video with Jerry West.
Wow.
Pure Hoops Media is out of business now, but I put both of those up on my YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to see a couple of really intimate interviews with Jerry West, where you hear him talk about things from his life, his career, everything, go to my YouTube page, my YouTube channel, and check them out. They're right at the top of the queue there. And I think if you're a Jerry West fan, I think you'll really enjoy listening to him.
Awesome stuff there. So want to thank everyone for tuning in to the 48 Minutes podcast here tonight. Definitely check out Pure Hoops Bruce on YouTube and see the Jerry West footage that he just explained with our guy, Dave Wohl. And we want to thank you for tuning in with us here tonight after Game 3, the Celtics up 3-0. Congrats, Bruce. And with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.